Cool. Hey, man, Chad, it's wonderful to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out for the show today.
No, thank you, Joe. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, you bet. So let's begin our conversation. Before we get into your life and sales, I want to know first and foremost, going into a new year, we just survived this pandemic, which just did so many things. We had to change and pivot and things were altered. How much of living and surviving that time period is creating lasting waves that you deal with right now in your life?
See, I was fortunate in that I wasn't stopped from working or anything like that. It definitely affected the industry, but it taught me a lot of lessons because I coincidentally just decided to change fields. I'd been in automotive for a while, and I decided to go out and be self-employed for the first time December 2018 before COVID really was a thing.
Yeah.
And so that was just a coincidence, part of timing. And I learned a lot during COVID. I went into trying to do insurance, and I learned about myself. One, that's a great field, and people can have a lot of success with it. That doesn't fulfill my heart. I don't enjoy it. It's just, when you're dead and you get $1 million, congratulations. But you and I are not having a great time when you sign the contract. It's not the fun and fulfilling life I'm looking for. And quite honestly, out of all my life in sales, I would say that it's easy to use COVID as a crutch, as an excuse to why I didn't, because I would say that was the one where I, by my definition, didn't succeed. So I ultimately, within COVID, went back to what I knew, just to make a better income and do whatever.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't say COVID directly, other than it taught me a lot about myself. And when I went out on my own about a year and a half, 2 years ago, I knew what I did wrong the first time, and it made a massive difference. And now I was just having a conversation with one of my owners here yesterday, and he specifically said, he's like, you're one out of, he couldn't think of how many, 1,000. He just threw out a number, and I said, no, not really. Like, I already did this, and like, because we're talking about other people not doing it correctly, and I was like, I already failed at this.
Yeah.
Right? I knew what I did wrong, and so this time I corrected it, and enjoy every day, and I appreciate what happened back then. Obviously, COVID was an awful time, and I would have loved if it didn't happen. But as a personal growth aspect, I'm succeeding because of it.
But isn't that the kind of the backbone of the entrepreneurial spirit? I mean, you do have to fail. I mean, it's almost like having kids. And after your first kid, you kind of have an idea of how it works. You're not so green, you're not so fresh at it. It's like you just build up this acumen. It almost seems like there should be a course out there where you do fail the first time and you go out and do it. So that way you know what you need to do to refine yourself.
Yeah, it's funny. I was actually, because I use my mindset on different clients' methods, so it can be applied to anything, right? Fitness is the easiest one, right? You can go
Yeah.
to the gym and just go through the motions, but if you go till failure, right, that's where all the growth happens. I think it's the easiest, relatable one to everyone because it's just right there. It's in everything. You can really apply it to anything.
So let's get into the heart and soul of what you do right now in 2025. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of grade school kids. It's career day, and one of the kids in the back of the room is like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer it?
Talking to a kid, and I have a 9-year-old. If I was to explain this to them, I think I would just say, "Hey, my job is great. I just make friends. I make as many friends as I can. I learn about them, and that's it. I get paid to make friends, and that's how I'd explain it to a child. Obviously, it's more than that,
Yeah.
but ultimately, that's what separates the stigma of a good a greasy salesman from a good one,
Yeah.
right? Because it doesn't matter what field I'm currently having offers in. I've have some clients that have crossed all 4 or 5, right?
Yeah.
Just because of the relationship building. So that's how I'd explain it to a grade school student.
So let's go back to when you were 9 years old. What was your ideal life? What was your dream to grow up and become?
You know what? That's a tough one. I was all over the place growing up. I definitely, so most of my career I've been selling auto, which I find comical because I wasn't a normal kid that gave a crap about cars. Quite
Yeah.
honestly, it wasn't my field. My parents find that funny. I definitely growing up changed my mind multiple times. I'd say grade school's tough. That's a really hard one. What you believed you were going to do. I think I thought I was going to be a lawyer at a young age, to be honest. That was actually probably the longest standing statement. In high school, I was going to be an electrician, so I didn't even take school that seriously because it didn't really matter. And then when I graduated, I realized, that wasn't the life that fulfilled me for sure. I don't know if it was just the shock of real life, but yeah, it was a bunch of different fields, and I kind of just fell into sales by accident, is what I say.
So, but all of these seeds had to be planted into you to have this sales acumen. So, take me back to where you were born and raised. What were the foundational seeds of your childhood growing up that lent you to having this career and being successful?
That's a great question, and I don't often get into it. When I was younger, the seeds, if you will, we moved around a lot. So I'm from Alberta, Canada.
Yeah.
I've lived in BC, Alberta, but Peace Country in this area. And growing up, my dad worked for a bank where we moved around a lot. Okay, and I was also homeschooled till high school. For my first 16 years of life, I had my friends in that initial town, but once we started moving, I had a hard time with it, and so I was bullied a lot. And so in that process, I really learned how to adapt by the third move
Yep.
and how to get along and chameleon really into any circle and any person. And it took me a while to realize this. And even in that, you go to summer camp as a kid, so I had those standing. Those are my long-term friends because those were the consistent ones. And so I had a lot of phone relationships. Like some of my best friends were completely over the phone. And now where I make all my money and connections is over the phone, right?
Yeah.
It's really hard for me to teach because when I'm having a conversation over the phone, this is no different to me. My heart is connecting with you just as if we were shaking. And I don't know if there's a spiritual side to that, but I definitely think it came from that upbringing, from quote unquote that suffering and growth. And it just recently connected that because I try to teach a lot of people this and I can tell them why I say this and why I do this. But really, the sixth sense or however you want to call it is there's no that's a normal conversation. I'm connecting with you, no different. I feel that and I think they feel that. And that really it all makes sense now, hindsight, but growing and my parents is like, oh, I don't know why we didn't think this is something you would do. It makes a lot of sense now, but it did just kind of happen by accident.
So my dad was a car salesman. I remember when I was a kid, I used to go watch him do it and watch all those guys, specifically him, and it would blow me away. Just the way that he could get on the phone, he could sell it, he could close the deal. So my question to you is this: when you think about the role of of a good salesperson, do you feel like there's a part of people that are born with that gene and it develops with experience, or do you feel like what's your take on it?
So that's again, I'm loving these questions because that's one I debate to this day.
Yeah,
Okay, I do think I've read a lot of different books. Jordan Belfort actually tried to solve this problem in his book because some people do just come across it naturally, right? And so his book, I don't know if it's his first book, but Way of the Wolf, the whole premise is teaching the average person to become him,
yeah,
right? That's the idea behind it. So he believes that it's possible. I think it's a little of both.
yeah.
It's just like anything. You can have natural. I played sports. Let's go back to the gym and stuff. I'm not a natural athlete, but I went farther than a lot of people I know. Again, comical. My parents know I wasn't natural in that aspect, but if you work harder at it, you can do better than the ones that naturally come by it. So it is a little of both. I think if I hired two salespeople, one that was a complete natural and lazy, and one that wanted it more and was putting in all the effort over the long run, I think the one that wants it more and puts in the effort and gets more reps will be better in the long run. And again, can apply to all aspects of life, but it is up for debate because you get certain people you're trying to teach and it's just not connecting. So
Yeah. Certainly. Well, I think about that Malcolm Gladwell book, After 10,000 Hours, You Become a Master of Something.
yes,
But
yeah.
it still means that there's got to be something in you. It's just like with sports. You're just not going to get a kid that's going to go out there and play that long if they don't have natural talent. There's got to be something in there. And the other interesting part of this is being a parent kind of demystifies that mystery a little bit because I think with my son's 20 now. And I was always into sports and I was always into meeting athletes. I used to mail baseball cards to players and wait for the mail to come back and have an autograph card. And he just naturally got into it. I never pushed him into it. And it's weird when you see your kids gravitate towards what you were into and you didn't influence that. So the nature nurture thing is kind of a trip to think about.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and well, twofold. One, the 1,000 hours, I don't think I'm spending 1,000 hours into something I don't want to do. I'm not going to
Right.
spend 1,000 hours on the violin. I don't care to be a master of the violin. I have zero desire.
Yes.
So I think I find this a passion. Like when I still think social media is a time suck, but when I open my social media, it is people actively selling. It is people public speaking. It is what I enjoy. And so and I do have a 9-year-old son, like I said, and it's funny, and I'm super excited. And obviously, he could change. He's gonna. I changed by 9. I know that factually. But the stuff he's doing now, like that Jordan Belfort book, we just what I'm doing on this podcast is my career is going great. Now I'm quote unquote building a brand. So he's editing my videos at 9. He's listening to the same audiobooks. We were doing a road trip back from my grandparents. He listened to that book and it was just a lesson. And I didn't like I put a video of him talking about it, but it wasn't like I didn't pre-teach him this. He's
Yeah.
just around me. He comes
Uh-huh.
home from school. I'm going to be sitting here making a sales call. Half my sales call videos I post on social media, he's in the background.
Yeah.
So if this trend continues, I'm actually super excited because yeah, like it does seem like he's into it. He enjoys it. He already has one of my favorite things he asked me on just an interest level was when he comes home, there's money making activities because I don't have a set income, never have in his entire life, and so he doesn't know what I make or exactly the dollars and cents of it, but he understands the difference between if I had a live appointments with people where I had the potential to make money, and he knows that, and what time wasting is, and so on. So I hope he keeps, obviously selfishly, he also into sports like I am. I hope he keeps the same trajectory, and he did take a lot of my characteristics. But time will tell.
Absolutely. Well, I'm in Kansas City, so I think about Patrick Mahomes, and his dad was a baseball player and how he was just brought up around it. Obviously, he has natural talent, but that
Hmm.
was the world that he was in. And I've always thought from the word go with him getting into professional athletics is that he's been used to that environment, the people, the culture, all of that. So when he
Hmm.
gets to that big stage, it's like us walking into a bedroom. We're not afraid. We're just flicking on the light and looking for something. When he gets into a stadium, he's been used to it since he was crawling. And it's
Yeah.
like, it's those things. Like your son watching you, it's like there's going to be levels of this that are just soaking in by osmosis. You don't have to
Mhm.
do anything but lead by example, and you just never know where it's going to go.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, I'm actually gonna let him start his own. He's going to do his first business here coming December. I told him to save up his money, and I already know what, in theory, he's going to buy and resell. But as long as he, takes the actions this year, but he's already doing it. It's like, hey,
Yeah.
oh, you want to go buy this? I was like, well, then you can't buy, more cups. There's these cups that I found that are very unique that I think he can, 2x on. And so anyway, yeah,
Yeah.
it's exciting. Being a parent is fun, and yeah,
Yeah.
I think big things if he keeps the trajectory.
Absolutely. No, that's young for being an entrepreneur for sure. So, yeah. So, let me ask you this. On your journey, on your path, who's been that hero for you, that inspiration?
See, that one changes over time. I'm in my 30s now. Originally, it'd be different athletes and things like that. Yeah, Tim Tebow was a huge one, honestly, that I looked up to when I was younger. And now it's become my dad and it's funny how does that. Because I was just as rebellious, if not more, than the average person, and I didn't really come around to my mid 20s. But what he's accomplished and how he's different than me. Like my son's a lot like me. I'm not a lot. Like my dad's wired differently than I am. But what he's accomplished, what I remember the struggles we were going through, we weren't well off. And where he's at now, without getting into his personal life too much, he's 10x his income.
Yeah.
And his dad's my grandfather, rest in peace, is no longer with us. And he really they're old school, were Mennonites.
Yeah.
Probably wouldn't have given him the affirmation anyway. So my dad does it without the outside praise.
Yeah.
And he's just driving himself internally for reasons that I don't fully understand. So he over time, that's who I, when I have a big moment or a big success, that I go to show to, and who I look up to, and who I hope to be, even on a character level. That one I knew the whole time, but to eventually become. So maybe it's a cliche, but no, as time grows on and prospectively seeing what decisions he made and things he did, it's definitely my father at this moment.
So, as a entrepreneur, as having the business acumen that you have, if you could meet anybody in the world right now in the realm of business or entrepreneurship, hang out with them, talk to them, see how they roll, ask questions, someone that might benefit you in your walk in life, who would that be?
See, there's so many, and I don't think it really who could really see. There's the Grant Cardones, the Andy Elliott's, these Jordan Belfort. Like I said, all these guys for sure have been there before me, and could teach me things. I'm not gonna go arrogantly here and teach me, but a perspective shift I recently. So we hired a trainer in one of our jobs here. We brought one in, just in a specific niche. And honestly, what that taught me, and it's someone that I had learned from. I'd learned from their content. I'd used it to speed up my growth. Um, and again, I don't want to, this is going to come across arrogant, but what I learned watching what we paid that person to do is like, he's great at what he does, but they're just human.
Yeah,
Right? So it's like they're nobody has the superpower pedestal, nothing. They're not better than you or I. So I would love to meet so many of the people I just listed. I think it'd be fascinating. I'm enjoying having this conversation with you.
yeah,
But ultimately, other than them being able, like 100%, they could give advice and speed up my growth. Don't get me wrong. But none of them really have the magic sauce, in my belief.
yeah,
Personally,
yeah.
yeah,
I totally
that's a
get it.
tough one. Yeah.
I totally get it. So, how do you find that balance in your life to be at the top of your game, being an entrepreneur and being a salesperson, and also evolving as a human being? What motivates you every day to wake up to become that being?
So I think it all starts, and a cliche, why, goals, things like that. So the biggest resonation for me is you have to start with big goals. A lot of these guys agree on that, and I would too. And when I say big goals, the thing where I differ is I think it's crucial. You have three goals, okay, long-term ones. One is like a fiscal whatever. Like for mine, I don't mind sharing, is I want to buy a castle in my life and live in it. Like if it's in Europe or France or wherever, you can buy castles. It's a few $1 million. It's out there. Maybe my
Yeah,
wife got to sell her on the concept, but to me, that would be the coolest thing in life if I could accomplish that. So that's one.
yeah,
That's motivating. That's not possible if I don't take action and develop. The second one I think is the most important. I probably should put it first. Is and it's different for everyone, Joe. Like everyone has a cause close to their heart. Okay. Something you can give money to that could make a difference. So to me, it's hard to go into it without getting into it. It's not anything personally I went through, just something I seen once in my life that like changed me to the core. And
yeah,
it's child sex trafficking. So to me, I take a portion of my income and I put it towards that. And I'm still trying to figure out how to measure that as a
yeah,
goal sense, because that's the tough part. But if I choose to sit on my ass for the next month, that's money. Sure, I'm not putting the trajectory to my castle, but it's also there are people that are directly affected in a negative way because I chose not to take action.
sure.
And so having ones that are affected outside of me, when I wake up tomorrow and I just don't feel like making those 2 hours of calls or training my team or doing whatever it is that I need to do and I want to procrastinate, it's one thing to say I'll get the castle tomorrow, but
Yeah,
having that goal that again it's gonna be different for everyone. It can be animals, it can be anti-bullying, it doesn't matter. Education. Something though that in your heart it connects,
yeah,
that's the biggest one because it's outside of you.
yeah,
Um, and then the last one is career. And that's, I kind of really landed on this career one. That's where I'm talking to you now. I'd like to become, I don't want to be those guys. I don't think they're special, but not special, like I said. So because I've taken on that mindset, it's like, well, why not me? They're not different than me. The only difference is they're taking action. And so I signed up for Podmatch. I connected with you. I've started posting my workday on social media and just putting it out there. And I'm already at within a month, I think four clients that I'm specifically hand holding through different aspects, two in business, one weight loss, goal setting, life. And I'm just seeing where it takes me, but that was goal three, right? So
yeah,
the goal castle, I want to help these kids and put money towards that. And then I want to look back on my life and at least know I tried to do this, not I'm 60 looking back and being like, I could have done this, you know?
yeah.
That could have been me. I'll know. I'll know.
So
So
speak.
so that's what does it.
So speaking of looking back, let's say you have a dream tonight. You run into an 18-year-old version of you. You can give that young version of you a piece of advice based on this life you've lived, the wisdom you've accumulated. What advice would you impart on that young version of you?
So there's a lot of things. The probably for my version of me, for the fact to get the belief from the kid that was bullied to where I am now, I think was getting really good at something, right? And so
Yeah,
and getting and so sales was the beginning of that. So the fastest way to me to getting better in sales is A, having a mentor, and then B, not being afraid to fail. So I actually just hired two 18-year-olds. I don't know if they're mini versions of me, but I'm having these conversations every day right now.
Yeah.
And what I'm sending a couple of them to do is to find a me, essentially, is what I'm trying to do. Is I'm door knocking is probably the least fun thing you could you could convince someone to do. So first, I'm going to send one of them out this evening, not because he needs to. That's just a personal growth aspect, and I want him to get 100 no's.
Yeah.
I'm not sending him
Yeah.
out to go make a deal or nothing like that. Come home after, maybe it's not 100, maybe it's 50, but go out for a few hours. I'm going to give him a set number of how many no's to take the pressure off, make it fun, make it realize that even the negative interactions don't matter.
Right.
They ultimately don't matter at all. And so the test to me to find out if quote unquote, doesn't need to be me, he can be himself, but if he's got what I think's gonna that I can do something with him is does he do it?
Yeah.
Right? Because if he does it, I have belief. I'm willing to invest in that individual and I'm excited to see what I can do and I'm gonna document it. It's part of why I'm doing it. But time will tell, but that's why I would do it and just put yourself out there. Don't worry about rejection. Realize you're just getting better faster by reps and that's where the confidence comes and it would just propel to the rest of your life.
I did that in college at one point. I did door to door with an older guy, and I will never forget. He had this whole theory about how the CIA killed JFK. I will never forget this dude. He just would always talk about that. It was like a continual story every time we got together. All right, so like I was saying, Dallas, 1963, and he would just get into the whole thing. But the whole
Like he
time,
was knocking with you or was the guy you knocked?
yeah, we were knocking together. So
I
yeah,
see. Yeah, yeah.
but once we stopped, we'd go up to the door and then we just, we do the whole thing. And I think it was vacuums or something like that.
Yeah.
And I don't know that we sold anything, but I learned a lot. I remember how daunting and this was in the 90s before things got weird in the modern day.
Mhm.
And that it was still it was an eye opener because when you go to people's environments, it takes a lot of guts to get to that point
Mhm.
where you can do that. It really
It's
does.
definitely I think the hardest version of
Yeah.
at least giving the guts to knowing you have the ability to make yourself do something you don't want to do
Yeah.
in sales. So if you can make yourself do that consistently, I think you will succeed. It's just a matter of time. So
100%. So, what's the biggest risk you've ever taken in life?
see, I'm risk adverse. So it's hard for people to parallel. I've done many risks. I've dipped into crypto. I've lost a lot of money in crypto. Yeah, the biggest risk I think was probably the second time going self-employed was
Yeah.
probably the biggest
Yeah.
because it had gone poorly. That's a longer story, but I went from first risk failed in COVID, like I mentioned a moment ago,
Yeah.
and then I went back to a dealership. They actually promoted me. They gave me the job I wanted. Like they convinced me to come back with, on paper, the greatest offer a car salesman's ever had. Okay, like it wasn't commission, it was base pay. 100% of the leads of the store were mine. It was my kingdom. I could go and come as I please. I
Yeah.
should have never left that role. But within a month, one of the managers was fired or quit, allegedly. And I was always, from the moment I started that I wanted that role, took it. And that was the end of my enjoyment of that career.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Just because I might make friends and do things the right way. I don't have a lot of headaches in my sales life. I don't. But when you become a manager of a place like that, well, now your whole life is just everybody's headaches and issues. And so that's what trajected me out, which led me to, because I wanted out. I'd already left once. This time for sure. I wanted out. I wanted my schedule back. I wanted control. And so, but I wasn't financially recovered from the COVID time when I did it.
Yeah.
Uh, but it was I was even coaxed out. I'm not going to say names, but I had a call from a friend. He's like, "What are you making right now?" Which was the best money I'd ever made in my life. And he's like, "If I pay you an extra 40 grand a year, would you quit and work for me?" Okay, I'm gonna listen to that conversation.
Yeah.
And I looked into it and it looked legitimate and whatever. And I ended up hopping out. And it again, risk adverse. It went awful. It wasn't at all as he put it. We're still friends because I think he came by it earnestly. I
Yeah.
just maybe was hearing what I wanted to hear, but I would still thank him because
Yeah.
he kicked me out of the door that I wasn't enjoying, which was the
Sure.
golden handcuffs, as you put it. And now that risk has paid off exponentially because I'm in my 30s now, my 20s. I just worked. I just worked. I didn't have control over my schedule. I didn't go to weddings. My wife and I still technically haven't gone on a honeymoon. We did go on a trip here this last September. We went to Europe, but technically, other people came. We never did that.
Yeah.
Um, So yeah, having control, being able to go to my son's hockey practices, games, him coming home at 4 and spending time with me in my office, it's been life changing, and so that's one of the biggest risks to pay off. But again, I'm risk adverse.
I
I'm
dig it.
kind of broken in that aspect. I have no fear of
Yeah.
what may happen. So.
Yeah, totally. So let me ask you this. Everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, clients, everyone that you work with, but you run the show. What's your
Mhm.
perception of you? Who do you think you are?
See, and without again coming across arrogant, because I don't think that's the way. I think we all should see ourselves as special. Like so, I named it the psycho mindset because I think that as and maybe not, and not even maybe not everybody has this complex. Okay, so I even heard Joe Rogan say it. I don't listen to a lot of his podcasts. Just seen a clip, and he said he always visualized that he was being filmed 24/7,
Yeah,
and that it was going to be watched back by others.
yeah,
I've always had that thought process. That was when he said it, that's not new. And I
yeah,
can't remember this other, so that's just again a complex of I was built to do more.
yeah.
And what's the other one? I'm not diagnosed with ADHD. Everyone in my life is fully convinced I have it except for my wife. And but that's irrelevant. I love what I'm able to accomplish now. What I consider a fail day, I believe most people would consider their best day.
Yeah,
And so I think having that complex, true or not, just the belief of it drives me to do so many different things.
yeah,
So I do believe I'm special. I do believe I'm capable of great things. And that's not to say that you're not or the next person I meet tomorrow isn't. Everyone, as long as they believe it and fully, like again, I don't know what someone believes, right?
right,
But
right.
if they convictionally in their heart of hearts believe it, I believe I'm special. I believe I'm capable of great things, and I think that I'm now with these type of conversations. I just want to meet other people that are that 18 to 30 that haven't taken the risk, as you put it, and I want to take their hand, let them see that like that the person I was talking about is I think ADHD is a superpower if
Sure.
used correctly. Like I don't want to drug it. Why would I want to change who I am now
Right.
if I'm connecting with people and liking them? Sure, my thoughts might be I don't know. I haven't done it, but I don't want to take away what I consider a superpower. And I've heard another public speaker call it that recently. And so both those being filmed all the time and ADHD being a superpower, I just take that and roll with it. If true
Sure.
or not true, it doesn't matter. That's how I see myself. I do think because of that, I there's nothing if I want to do it that I couldn't accomplish.
Absolutely. So if anyone wants to reach out, learn more, anything, any of the good work going on in your world, where do they go? How do they find out more?
Right now, Instagram and TikTok, it's Chad Sales Psycho are the two that I'm branding it. Psycho, you can see it behind me here. So that's where you'd find me. You can send me a DM. And right now, I'm quite honestly, I'm not charging for anything for the time being. I'm just looking for fishing for those motivated individuals that I can show what I can do with their life. So I'm just
Right
kind
on.
of interviewing people and finding the right ones.
Perfect. I will put this in the show notes. Chad, it's wonderful to meet you, man. Thank you so much for your passion, for your story. Best of luck with everything.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. I really appreciate you having me.